The great palace of Zeora stood high above the shining city. Its towers were carved from white stone, its walls covered with golden patterns. From the outside it looked perfect, strong, proud, and filled with beauty. But inside, in one of the quiet chambers far from the grand halls, lived a princess who never felt beautiful at all. Her name was Lyra. She was the youngest daughter of King Torrin, ruler of the Zeoran people. Her sisters all had pale silver skin, shining eyes, and crystal-like hair that sparkled when the light touched it. They were praised as jewels of the kingdom, spoken of in songs and admired by nobles. But Lyra was different. Her skin was green, a color her people whispered about with disgust. From the day she was born, courtiers looked at her with pity. Servants whispered in corners. Some said she was cursed by the gods. Others said her mother must have angered the spirits. Lyra grew up hearing those words again and again. Her father never showed anger toward her, but even his eyes carried sadness when he looked at her. Her mother, who once held her close, soon passed away, and the princess was left with only the cold stares of the palace. She learned to hide. While her sisters danced in the great hall during festivals, she stayed behind curtains or in her chamber. When guests came, she covered herself with long robes and veils. She avoided mirrors. Each time she caught her reflection, she remembered the cruel words of the council. She will never be fit for a throne. No prince would want such a bride. And so Princess Lyra lived in silence, carrying the heavy weight of being different. On the morning of the gathering, the palace was alive with excitement. Servants ran through the halls, preparing tables filled with food. Musicians tuned their instruments. Flags of many colors were raised high above the towers. For the first time in many years, envoys from Earth were coming to Zeora. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only joined interstellar travel a short time ago, yet already they had impressed many with their boldness. Lyra's people, the Zeorans, wanted to meet them, trade with them, and perhaps even ally with them. The council saw the humans as useful, but to Lyra, they were only another group of strangers. Strangers who would surely laugh at her just as her own people did. Her nurse, an older woman named Soraya, entered her chamber carrying a robe of deep blue. "Princess," Soraya said gently, "you must attend the gathering today. The king commands it." Lyra looked up from her chair, her green hands resting in her lap. "Why?" she whispered. "No one wishes to see me. They only want my sisters. Let them shine." "I will stay here." Soraya shook her head. "Your father says all his daughters must stand by his side. You are a princess of Zeora, and that cannot be hidden forever." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, but she knew there was no choice. With slow movements, she allowed Soraya to dress her in the robe and veil. The fabric covered most of her skin, hiding the green color she hated so much. When the nurse placed a silver circlet on her head, Lyra looked at the floor, refusing to see her own reflection. The great hall was filled with light. Tall windows let in the glow of twin suns. Rows of nobles stood, waiting as the king entered and took his throne. His daughters followed. Lyra walked last, her head lowered, her veil hiding her face. She heard the whispers as she passed, soft voices saying, "There she is, the cursed one." At the far end of the hall, the doors opened. The human envoys entered, dressed in dark uniforms with shining symbols. There were men and women among them, their faces varied and strange. Some had light skin, some dark, and their eyes held many colors. To Lyra, they looked unusual but also free. No two of them the same, yet none ashamed. The leader of the humans bowed to the king, speaking words of respect. The two groups began their exchange. Gifts were given, crystals from Zeora and strange devices from Earth. Musicians played, and soon the hall was filled with laughter and talk. Lyra stood silently at the edge, trying to make herself invisible. She thought no one would notice her, but as her eyes wandered, she saw one of the humans looking her way. He was younger than the others, perhaps not much older than she was. His hair was brown, his eyes steady. Unlike the others who laughed and traded stories, he seemed curious, watching quietly as if searching for something. Their eyes met for just a moment, and Lyra's heart jumped. She quickly looked away, ashamed. She thought, he sees the veil. He knows why I hide. She pressed herself closer to the shadows of the hall. The feast began. Tables were filled with food, strange dishes from Earth placed beside the shining fruits of Zeora. The nobles and humans sat together, but Lyra chose a quiet corner. She lifted her cup to her lips, hoping no one would speak to her. Then a voice came. "Excuse me," it said gently. Lyra froze. She turned slowly and saw the young human standing before her. He was holding a small plate of food, but his eyes were on her, not the feast. "May I sit here?" he asked. Lyra hesitated. No one ever asked to sit with her. She wanted to refuse, to send him away before he saw too much. But something in his tone, calm, respectful, made her nod. The human smiled and sat down. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I serve as an officer in the Earth Fleet." Lyra lowered her gaze. "I am Princess Lyra," she said softly. Daniel tilted his head. "It is an honor, Princess. You know, I noticed you standing by the windows earlier. Your robe is beautiful, but—" He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "I could not help but think you were hiding something brighter." Her chest tightened. She thought he was mocking her, as so many did. But when she dared to glance at him, his expression was sincere. His eyes did not hold laughter, only calm curiosity. "Do not jest with me," Lyra whispered. "There is nothing bright in me." Daniel shook his head. "That is not true. I come from Earth, where forests cover great lands. Their color is deep green, full of life and strength. Your skin, it reminds me of that. To me, it is not something to hide. It is beautiful." The word struck her like a sudden storm. Beautiful. No one had ever spoken that word to her before. She stared at him, her lips parting but no sound coming out. For a moment she did not feel like the cursed princess. She felt seen. Around them the hall was loud with music and laughter, but Lyra heard only his voice echoing in her mind. Beautiful. Could he truly mean it, or was this some trick? Her heart beat fast and she could not answer. Daniel simply smiled again and turned his eyes to the feast. He spoke of Earth, its forests, its rivers, its mountains. Lyra listened, quiet and uncertain, but each word painted a world where her color was not shameful but natural. For the first time in her life, a tiny spark lit inside her. A spark of hope? The word stayed in Princess Lyra's mind long after the feast had ended. Beautiful. It was a word she had never thought belonged to her. A word her people avoided whenever they spoke of her. Yet the young human, Daniel, had spoken it without hesitation, his eyes clear and honest. That night, when she returned to her chamber, Lyra sat by the tall window, staring out at the twin moons that hung over Ziora. The silver light washed over her green skin. She lifted her hand and looked at it closely. She had always thought of this color as a mark of shame, but now she whispered the word he had given her. "Beautiful," she said softly, testing it like a secret she was afraid to say too loudly. For the first time in many years, she felt warmth spread through her chest. It frightened her, but it also gave her strength she had not known she carried. The next day, the palace was filled again with activity. The humans had brought strange devices, machines that could heal wounds quickly and small drones that could fly through the air like birds. The Zioran Council was impressed and eager to trade. Lyra, however, kept to the side as always, wrapped in her veil, her presence mostly ignored. But Daniel noticed her. He walked over during a pause in the meetings, carrying a small round object. "Princess Lyra," he said with a respectful bow. She looked up, startled. "Why do you come to me?" "Surely the council wishes to speak with you," he smiled. "They speak enough. I wish to share this with you." He held out the object. With a soft press, the device opened, projecting a glowing image into the air. Lyra gasped. It was a forest unlike any she had ever seen. Tall trees with wide trunks stretched toward the sky. Their leaves were green like her skin, filling the air with life. Streams of water ran between the roots, sparkling like liquid silver. Birds of bright colors flew overhead, their songs faint but sweet. "This," Daniel said, his eyes shining, "is Earth. This forest is called Amazon. It is one of the largest we have. My people protect it, for it gives us air and life. Do you see? Green is the color of life itself for us. It is treasured." Lyra stared, unable to speak. She lifted her hand slowly, letting the image of the trees pass through her fingers. Her throat tightened. It is beautiful," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "As are you, Princess," her heart pounded. She turned away quickly, hiding her face beneath her veil. She feared he would see her cheeks darken with a strange warmth. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Not her family, not the nobles, not even the kind nurse Soraya, but whispers were already beginning to spread. The Zioran nobles, watching from the edges, noticed how often the human officer approached the hidden princess. They leaned close to one another, muttering, "Why does he seek her?" one said. "Perhaps he mocks her, pretending she has worth," another sneered. "Or perhaps the humans plot to use her weakness for their gain," a third whispered. The council members carried these rumors to the king. Though King Torrin loved his daughter in his own quiet way, he feared the shame she brought to the royal name. When he heard that a human had spoken with her too often, his face grew stern. "She must not believe false hopes," the king told his advisors. "If she begins to dream of a life she cannot have, it will only bring pain." That evening, Lyra walked alone in the palace garden. It was a quiet place, filled with silver flowers that glowed faintly in the dark. She came here often when she wanted peace. Tonight, however, she was not alone. She heard footsteps on the stone path. Turning, she saw Daniel walking toward her, holding a small lantern. "Forgive me," he said. "I did not mean to disturb you. I only wished for fresh air." Lyra lowered her eyes. "This is the garden of the royal family. Few come here without reason." Daniel paused, then gave a small smile. "Then perhaps fate guided me." She said nothing, but her heart beat faster. They walked side by side among the glowing flowers. Daniel asked her about Zayora, the seasons, the customs, the music. Slowly, she found herself speaking more than she had in years. Her voice trembled at first, but he listened with such care that she felt safe. At one point, Daniel stopped and looked at her veil. "May I ask something, princess?" She stiffened. "What is it? Why do you always hide? Forgive me if I offend, but I wish to understand." Her chest tightened. She wanted to flee, but his tone was not cruel. It was gentle, filled with genuine curiosity. After a long silence, she slowly lifted her veil. The green of her skin glowed softly in the garden light. She braced herself for a look of disgust. But Daniel's eyes only widened with wonder. "Like the leaves in spring," he said softly. "You shine, princess," her breath caught. She lowered the veil quickly, ashamed of the sudden tears in her eyes. No one had ever looked at her like that. No one had ever compared her to something alive, something treasured. "Why do you say such things?" she whispered. "Do you not see how my people look at me? They call me cursed. They mock me." Daniel's voice grew firm. "Then they are blind. On Earth, difference is not a curse, it is what makes us strong. No forest has only one tree, no sea only one fish. Diversity brings beauty, princess. You are proof of that." Lyra could not answer. Her heart was too full, her mind too shaken. She turned her face away, but for the first time she did not feel like a shadow. The days passed and their bond grew stronger. Each time the humans met with the council, Daniel found a moment to speak with Lyra. Sometimes he showed her more images of Earth, blue oceans, snowy mountains, deserts that stretched endlessly. Sometimes he told her stories of human explorers who braved the unknown, and sometimes they simply sat in silence watching the stars. For Lyra, every moment was both joy and fear. Joy because Daniel's presence lit a fire inside her heart. Fear because she knew others would never accept it. Her fears soon proved true. One afternoon, the council gathered in private with the king. Their faces were stern, their voices sharp. "This human grows too close to the cursed princess," one counselor said. "He fills her with dangerous ideas," another added. "She begins to believe she has worth. If she rises, she may threaten the balance of the court. The people will not follow a green-skinned heir." King Torrin frowned deeply. He loved Lyra, but he also feared the unrest of his people. At last he gave a heavy command. "From this day forward," he said, "Princess Lyra shall not meet with the human again. She will remain in her chambers when the envoys are present. Guard her well. This matter is closed." When Lyra heard the order, her heart broke. She sat in her chamber, staring at the closed doors, the guards outside, and the silence within. She remembered Daniel's words, his voice calling her beautiful, his eyes that held no judgment, and now she was to be locked away once more like a shadow hidden from the light. Tears filled her eyes, but beneath the sadness, another feeling stirred. A quiet spark of anger. She had tasted kindness, she had felt hope, and she could not forget it. For the first time in her life, Lyra began to wonder, what if they are wrong? What if I am not cursed? And somewhere in the palace, Daniel also sat in silence, troubled by the king's command, his heart restless. He had seen the truth in the princess's eyes, and he knew this was not the end. Princess Lyra remained in her chamber for the first time in years without interruption. The king's order had been clear. No meetings with the human Daniel and no venturing to the great halls while the Earth envoys were present. The guard stationed outside her door reminded her constantly of the world she was no longer allowed to touch. Yet, despite the confinement, Lyra's mind was alive with the memory of Daniel's words. The word beautiful echoed endlessly in her thoughts. It was a strange magic that no spell or potion of her world could create. It made her heart ache and hope grow at the same time. Each morning she would walk to her window and stare at the gardens below, remembering the night they had first spoken there. The silver flowers glowed softly in her mind's eye, and she could almost hear Daniel's voice telling her she was not cursed. Daniel, on the other hand, was not idle. Though the king's order forbade him from approaching the princess, he found ways to remain close. During meetings with the council, he would linger near the hallways that led to her chambers, studying the palace from a distance, imagining what she must be doing. He felt a quiet determination. He could not stop caring for her simply because rules demanded it. One evening, he noticed a small balcony that overlooked the palace gardens, where the guards sometimes left the doors slightly open. Quietly he waited. Lyra, curious about the outside world and craving fresh air, had taken a moment to step onto the balcony. Their eyes met across the space. Daniel raised a small hand in greeting. Lyra's chest fluttered. She knew the guards could see, and yet in that instant, nothing else mattered. "Princess Lyra," he whispered softly so only she could hear. "I hope you are well." Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. She whispered back, "I am thinking of the forest you showed me." Daniel nodded. "Then we are together there, even if apart." Over the next few days, a secret correspondence began. The human officers often carried small devices from Earth, hollow scrolls that could transmit messages quietly. Daniel used one to send tiny notes of encouragement. He drew pictures of mountains, oceans, and stars, and he sent words that spoke of strength, courage, and beauty. Lyra began to respond in kind, writing in careful script, though her hands shook each time. She told Daniel about her life in the palace, her secret love for the silver flowers in the gardens, and her longing to see the world outside. Each message was filled with both hope and fear. Hope that someone finally understood her. Fear that discovery could bring punishment. Meanwhile, the Zioran Council watched with growing suspicion. Rumors of their secret exchange reached the ears of King Torin once again. He frowned as he read the reports, torn between his duty and his love for his daughter. "Why does she need encouragement from a human?" one counselor demanded. "She is learning to believe in herself," the king said quietly, more to himself than to them. "Perhaps that is what she needs." But the council would not relent. They warned the king that if the princess continued to bond with the humans, it could lead to unrest among the nobles. "The people do not understand her. They will laugh, or worse, rebel," a senior advisor said. The king sighed. He loved Lyra more than any law or tradition, yet he feared the consequences. He could not remove Daniel entirely, for the humans were guests, and their departure could ruin diplomatic relations. He could only watch and hope that his daughter would stay safe. For Lyra, the secret messages and stolen moments were a lifeline. Each day she felt more confident. She began exploring her chambers and even parts of the palace that she had once avoided. She noticed the colors of the walls, the patterns in the floor tiles, and the shapes of the trees visible through her windows. Everything seemed brighter, alive, as though Daniel's words had painted the world anew. One afternoon she decided to test her courage. She slipped quietly from her chamber, walking along hidden corridors toward the gardens. She carried with her a small hollow device containing a drawing she had made of the glowing flowers. Her heart raced with fear of discovery, but the thrill of independence gave her courage. In the garden she found Daniel waiting at a quiet spot under a tall silver tree. The wind carried the faint scent of blossoms. He turned toward her and smiled as if he had been expecting her. "You came," he said softly. Lyra handed him the device. "I drew these for you," she said, her voice trembling. "The flowers in the garden? They remind me of what you showed me." Daniel took it gently. The holographic flowers floated in the air, glowing softly. He studied them closely, then looked up at her. "These are wonderful. You have an eye for beauty, princess. I see your heart in them." Her chest swelled. She did not understand why his words carried such power, but they did. She felt seen, truly seen for the first time in her life, days turned into weeks and Lyra's confidence grew. She began walking more openly in the palace, exploring halls and speaking softly with the servants. They noticed a change in her demeanor, though none dared speak it aloud. Daniel, meanwhile, found ways to teach her about the humans' world. He showed her images of bustling cities, flying ships, and fields filled with plants and animals of many colors. He told her stories of humans who had faced dangers far from home and had never given up. Lyra listened with rapt attention, absorbing each tale like a sponge. One evening, Daniel asked her, "Do you know why I admire you, princess?" Lyra lowered her eyes, unsure if she could bear to hear it. "Because I am green?" she whispered. Daniel laughed softly. "Not because of that alone. It is your courage, your curiosity, your kindness. You are unlike anyone I have ever met. You have a light inside you that others fail to see. That is why you are beautiful." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. However, not everyone was pleased. The court continued to watch them, whispering with suspicion. Servants who had once ignored Lyra now observed her movements closely. Rumors grew that the princess and the human officer were conspiring, or worse, breaking royal protocol. One day, a senior advisor approached the king. "Your Majesty, the princess is meeting with the human again. I have seen them near the gardens. This cannot continue. We must act." King Torrin looked down at the floor, troubled. "She is learning to be herself," he said quietly. "Can we punish courage?" The advisor frowned. "It is not courage, sire. It is rebellion. She is defying the customs of our people. Soon the humans will encourage her to act against the throne." The king's jaw tightened. He knew the advisor was right in part. Lyra's growing strength, fueled by Daniel's words, could make her more independent than ever before. But how could he stop it without breaking her spirit? Lyra herself noticed the tension in the palace. The whispers, the glances, the quiet suspicion. It all reminded her of the fear she had carried for so long. Yet, even as she feared being discovered, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt determination. She would not shrink from the world again. She would not hide herself, nor would she let the harsh words of others define her. Daniel's voice, carried in messages and memories, became her guide. "You are strong. You are beautiful. You are not cursed." And she believed him. One night, as they met secretly in the gardens, Daniel held out a small book. "I thought you might like this," he said. "It is full of stories from Earth, about heroes and explorers who faced impossible odds. I thought, perhaps you could see yourself in them." Lyra accepted it carefully. She opened it and saw illustrations of people climbing mountains, sailing across seas, and discovering strange new lands. Her eyes widened as she turned the pages, and she realized something remarkable. She could imagine herself in these stories, not as someone who hid, but as someone who mattered. "You make me feel like I can do anything," she said softly. Daniel smiled. "You can, and you will." For the first time, Lyra felt a surge of hope that was not dependent on anyone else's approval. She had Daniel's words, yes, but more importantly, she had begun to see herself as worthy. She had begun to understand that her green skin, her different appearance, and her unique abilities were not weaknesses. They were part of what made her remarkable. And so, the bond between Lyra and Daniel grew stronger with each passing day, not just through words, but through trust, respect, and a shared sense of wonder. Together, they began to create a world in which the princess was not a shadow hidden in the palace, but a light that could shine brightly. The sun rose over Zeora, casting golden light across the palace towers and the city below. Princess Lyra awoke with a mixture of excitement and fear. Another day had begun, and with it another chance to see Daniel, even if only in secret. Her chamber, once a place of quiet sadness, now felt like a sanctuary. She had spent weeks learning small ways to explore the palace without attracting attention. Her confidence had grown, but so had the whispers and suspicion that followed her every move. That morning, she found a message from Daniel hidden under the corner of her desk, a tiny hollow scroll carefully folded. He had written that he would meet her in the garden after midday. Lyra's heart raced. The thought of seeing him again filled her with both joy and anxiety. The council, meanwhile, had grown increasingly restless. They noticed Lyra's absence during several public appearances and began to question the king. "Your Majesty," one counselor said, "the princess is wandering alone. She defies our guidance. This human must be influencing her." We must act before the situation worsens. King Torin's jaw tightened. He loved his daughter, yet the tension of the court weighed heavily on him. She is learning courage, he said quietly. Punishment will not teach her that. We must be careful. By midday, Lyra made her way to the palace gardens, heart pounding with every step. The guards' eyes followed her from the corners, but she kept calm. The gardens were quiet, bathed in sunlight. Birds called softly from the trees, and the silver flowers glimmered in the wind. Daniel was waiting at their usual spot beneath the tallest silver tree. When he saw her, he smiled. "Princess," he said, bowing slightly. "I wondered if you would come." "I always come," Lyra said softly, a small smile on her lips. "Even when it is difficult." They walked together along the stone paths, speaking quietly. Lyra showed him the flowers she loved most, and he told her more stories about Earth, the deserts, the forests, the oceans, and the mountains. "You have a gift," Daniel said as he spoke. "Not just your appearance, Princess, but your mind. You notice things others overlook. You understand beauty in ways even your people cannot see." Lyra felt her chest tighten. For so long, no one had acknowledged her thoughts or feelings. His words lifted something heavy from her shoulders, but peace did not last. From the shadows of the trees, Lyra noticed movement. Several palace guards approached, their faces serious and unyielding. Panic rose in her chest. She knew the king had not ordered this, yet here they were, ready to stop her. "Princess Lyra," one said, bowing stiffly, "the king commands you return to your chambers immediately. There are rumors of improper conduct with the human officer. You must come at once." Lyra's heart pounded. She glanced at Daniel, whose eyes were filled with concern but also calm determination. "Do not worry," he whispered. "We will not be stopped." The guard stepped closer, their hands on their weapons, but Daniel moved to stand beside her, placing himself between her and the approaching men. "You have no right to stop her," he said firmly. "She is under the protection of the king. You may not harm her." The guards hesitated, unsure whether to follow orders or the law of the throne. Lyra realized she could no longer hide. She took a deep breath, remembering his words. "You are strong. You are beautiful. You are not cursed." She lifted her hands toward the sky. The green of her skin began to glow faintly, a soft light that spread across her arms and face. It was subtle at first, but as she focused, it became stronger. The silver flowers in the garden reflected the glow, and the shadows of the trees flickered in response. The guards froze. They had never seen this before. The energy was not dangerous, but it was undeniable, powerful and pure. "This is who I am," Lyra said, her voice steady. "I will not hide anymore." Daniel watched with pride. "You are amazing, Princess." "Never forget that." Some of the guards stepped back while others exchanged worried glances. Rumors had always spoken of powers hidden in the royal line, but no one had ever witnessed it. Word of the garden confrontation spread quickly through the palace. The council convened an emergency meeting, angry and fearful. "The princess flaunts her power in public," one counselor shouted. "This is unacceptable." "She is defying our traditions," another exclaimed. King Torin entered, his face stern but his eyes soft. "Enough," he said. "Lyra is my daughter. She will not be punished for showing courage. She has protected herself without harm to others. That is all I require." The council fell silent, though murmurs continued. The king's words were law, but they had also given Lyra freedom she had not expected. In the days following, Lyra and Daniel's bond grew stronger. They explored more of the palace together, sometimes secretly, sometimes under the king's quiet approval. Lyra learned about Earth's culture, its music, its art, its technology, and Daniel learned about the traditions of Zeora. They discovered shared values, curiosity, kindness, and the desire to make the world better. One evening, Daniel said, "Princess, I want to show you something different." He led her to a chamber she had never entered before, filled with strange machines and devices. "This is a human exploration room. We study other planets here, track stars, and measure energy. Look at the maps, planets, moons, asteroids, stars. Everything is connected." Lyra's eyes widened. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Her green skin glowed slightly as she moved closer to the displays. The lights reflected off her face, making her look like a living jewel. Daniel smiled. "You are part of this beauty too, Princess. Don't ever forget it," her heart swelled. Each day, each meeting, each conversation reminded her that she could matter, that she could shine, and that she did not need the approval of those who could not see her worth. But with new strength came new challenges. Some of the nobles and counselors plotted quietly. They feared that Lyra's growing confidence and her bond with Daniel could disrupt the court. They whispered to the king, questioning whether the human's influence was safe. One advisor said, "Your Majesty, if she continues, she may challenge our traditions. This could lead to unrest among the people. We must act before it is too late." The king shook his head. "She is learning to be herself. She is not harming anyone. Our traditions must serve the people, not destroy those who are brave enough to grow." Despite the tension, Lyra no longer hid. She walked in the halls openly, sometimes with Daniel nearby. People stared, whispered, and sometimes laughed, but she held her head high. Her confidence was no longer fragile. It had grown into quiet strength. She realized that being seen was not frightening anymore. Being judged was only a challenge she could meet with courage. She remembered every word Daniel had spoken, every story he had shared. "You are strong. You are beautiful. You are not cursed." For the first time in her life, Lyra truly believed it. The morning sun rose over the capital of Zeora, but peace was shattered. From the sky, dark shapes approached, ships not of the human fleet but hostile raiders from a neighboring empire. Their banners bore harsh symbols and their engines roared like thunder. The city's alarms rang, echoing through the palace halls. Inside, the council panicked. Guards rushed through the corridors, weapons in hand. Servants hid wherever they could. King Torrin gathered the royal family, but his worry was heavy. The raiders were known for cruelty and destruction, and many feared that the palace could not withstand their assault. Lyra watched from her chamber window, heart pounding. For weeks she had grown strong, confident in small ways, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of war. The city she had once feared to walk through, the people she had always thought distant, were now in danger. Daniel arrived quickly, moving through the palace without delay. He was not alone. A small team of human officers had come to protect the envoys and the royal family. Daniel found Lyra in the garden chamber, her green skin glowing faintly as her worry and determination surged. "Princess," he said, taking her hand, "we must act quickly. This is no longer about court politics. People need you. Your strength, your courage, they will inspire them." Lyra swallowed, her throat tight. "But I am just me. How can I help against so many enemies?" Daniel shook his head firmly. "You are not just you, you are a princess of Zeora. You are strong. You have power they cannot match. Trust yourself, princess. I believe in you." For the first time, she allowed herself to feel fear, but alongside it she felt something stronger. Determination. She would not hide while her people suffered. The palace gates shuddered as the raider ships descended. Their soldiers poured into the outer courtyards, their armor glinting under Zeora's twin suns. The city gates were defended, but the raiders moved with speed and precision. Civilians fled in panic, and guards struggled to contain the chaos. Daniel guided Lyra to the palace courtyard. "Stay close to me," he said. "We will help as many people as we can." Lyra nodded, her hands glowing faintly. She had trained herself in secret, testing the subtle energy that flowed through her green-skinned body. She was not yet fully in control, but she could use it to protect and to inspire. The first wave of raiders reached the gardens. Lyra raised her hands, and a wave of soft green energy pulsed outward. It was not destructive, but it formed a protective barrier around the fleeing civilians, slowing the raiders and giving guards time to move families to safety. The energy rippled through the trees and flowers, making them glow with life. The soldiers paused, uncertain. They had never seen such power from a princess. Daniel moved beside Lyra, guiding her focus. "You can do more, princess. Protect them, lead them, show your strength." Lyra inhaled deeply, concentrating. Her power expanded, creating a dome over the palace gardens. The raiders tried to break through, but her energy held. The civilians looked on in awe, fear giving way to hope. For the first time, they saw not a hidden, cursed princess, but a protector. The battle continued, and the raiders regrouped, pushing deeper into the palace. Daniel and his team fought alongside the Zeoran guards, but the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. Lyra's energy pulses became stronger, more precise. She learned to direct it, using it to disarm raiders, shield the injured, and guide fleeing citizens to safety. Her confidence grew with each act of protection. She realized her green skin and the energy within were not curses, they were gifts. They were her strength, and she could wield them to defend her people. During the fight, Lyra saw a group of children trapped near a collapsed wall. The debris was heavy, and no guards could reach them quickly enough. Without hesitation, she dashed forward, her energy glowing around her hands. The stones lifted slowly, guided by her focus, forming a safe path. The children ran toward her, eyes wide in wonder. "You're safe now," Lyra said softly, smiling for the first time that day. Daniel watched, his pride unhidden. "That's it, Princess! You are stronger than you realize." The battle raged around them, but Lyra no longer felt fear. She moved with purpose, protecting every person she could. Her courage inspired the guards, who began to fight with renewed strength. Even the council, observing from a safe distance, could not deny her power and bravery. By evening, the raiders began to retreat. They had underestimated the combination of Zioran forces, human strategy, and Lyra's growing abilities. The palace still stood, battered but intact. Civilians emerged from hiding, cheering for the princess who had saved them. King Torrin watched from the palace balcony, tears in his eyes. His daughter had faced danger bravely, her green skin glowing under the setting sun. He realized that his fears of shame had been unfounded. Lyra's courage had proven her worth more than any council decree or court tradition ever could. After the battle, Lyra and Daniel walked through the gardens. The silver flowers, some crushed, were beginning to lift in the gentle evening wind. Lyra's energy faded slowly, leaving her glowing faintly in the twilight. "You did it, Princess," Daniel said, his voice filled with admiration. "You saved so many people today. You showed them your true strength." Lyra looked at him, smiling but exhausted. "I could not have done it without you. You gave me the courage to try even when I doubted myself." Daniel shook his head. "No, you did this. I only reminded you of what you already had inside. You are strong, brave, and yes, beautiful." Her cheeks warmed at his words. She had heard them before, but now they felt different. They were not just words, they were proven truth. She had shown the kingdom her power, her courage, and her heart. Word of Lyra's actions spread quickly. By the next day, the palace and city celebrated her bravery. The people who had once whispered and mocked now spoke of her with respect and admiration. The council, forced to accept reality, praised her courage reluctantly. Even the king's sternest advisors could not deny that Lyra had protected the kingdom when all others feared to act. Lyra, for the first time, felt a sense of belonging. She had always been different, but now she knew that difference was her strength. Her green skin, her quiet courage, her ability to inspire, all of it mattered, and Daniel? He stood beside her, proud and unwavering, knowing that she had grown beyond even his expectations. Together they had faced fear and emerged victorious. That night under the stars, Lyra and Daniel spoke quietly. "You see?" he asked gently. "You always had this inside you. You were never cursed, never weak. You just needed to believe in yourself." Lyra smiled, her green skin glowing faintly in the starlight. "I believe now," she whispered. "I understand what you meant when you said I was beautiful. Not just outside, but inside too." Daniel took her hand. "You are more than beautiful, Princess. You are remarkable. Your people will see that, and so will the galaxy one day." For the first time, Lyra felt at peace. She had faced danger, discovered her power, and proved her worth, not just to others, but to herself. And in that quiet moment, she knew her life would never be the same.